Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Amdar Khan. And yes, as you know, we give information with regards to sports from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports. That basically works both for Twitter and Instagram. Anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. And yes, from the world of Premier League, West Ham won against the Wolves 2-3 on Tuesday. And yes, from the world of NBA, Brooklyn Nets win against the Knicks 114 to 112 on Tuesday. And from the world of tennis, yes, Miami Open. Poland's Hubert Hurkacz actually made his maiden Miami Open title. Yes, from the world of Olympics, North Korea has actually withdrawn from Japan 2020 over coronavirus concerns. And yes, those were the headlines. And yes, we'll definitely be talking more about the world of football because there have been a few major matches and a few major developments. And to discuss all of this, we have with us Rob. Rob, thank you for joining in.
Thank you.
So Rob, we'll be talking about, obviously, the football side. We'll talk more about the Premier League to begin with. We want to talk more about West Ham's win against the Wolves on Thursday. What's your take on Tuesday, 3-2? What's your take on that match to begin with?
Well, it was another good win for West Ham. I think their performances this season have been outstanding. I think David Moyes has fixed the team with the issues that they had last season. And obviously the signing of Jesse Lingard from Manchester United has been inspirational. Has taken the team to the next level, and I think that they are genuine top four contenders at the moment.
Right, but you know, currently, as we currently see the standings, let's talk about the standings to begin with. There's a lot of interesting changes that we generally see right now. In looking at West Ham coming up to the top four, do you see that it would be sustainable for them in the future?
Maybe not next season. I think that they're on the crest of a wave this year, and there's definitely the opportunity with the way that they're playing and winning football matches that they could get that fourth spot this season. But it's more about relativity. I think this year, with a few games left to go with their form, yes, they could make top four. Whether they could do that next season and beyond, that's a different question.
Right, interesting. Let's talk about the Everton, who actually managed to draw against the Crystal Palace. What's your take on that match?
Missed opportunity for Everton. I think, they're in that pack just outside the top four. And they've been a bit hit and miss this season. Sometimes they've shown great form, certainly at the start of the campaign. But they've fizzled out a little bit. And I think against a team like Crystal Palace, especially at home, they were expecting to get the 3 points. And certainly conceding so late in the game, that was a bitter blow for Ancelotti.
True that, because if we look into things maybe 10 days, 15 days before, the top four were comparatively very different. But now when you see a lot of teams actually coming down, Tottenham's down to number 6, Chelsea's on number 5, and Chelsea's obviously, when we talk about Thomas Tuchel, when he joined in and they were winning consecutive games, but they had a loss as well. What's your take on that one?
Well, a huge surprise, obviously, with the 5-2 at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea have been incredibly consistent, really fixing their defence more than anything. Their attack's not really ticked, even since Tuchel's come in. There's still things for Tuchel to fix, certainly with Werner and with Havertz. And I think that that's reflected maybe in where their league position is at the moment. You've got to remember, with the money that they spent this last summer, this was a team expecting to challenge for the title. So the fact that they're around 4th or 5th place at the moment is still very much underachieving. And there's still lots of work for Tuchel to do.
To be honest, if we talk about the underachievement, the surprising part is this time things are pretty much different in the league itself. Maybe it's because of the fact that when we look at matches, I'm sure you would probably give us a good word about it. When you look at matches, obviously teams, when they play on their home ground, they have their support or the moral support. All the spectators out there, the motivation level is high, the players' motivation level is high. But now they have to, unfortunately, play in like empty stadiums. What's your take on that?
Well, there's certainly an impact there. When you don't have your crowd behind you. It's the same for any sport, isn't it? Whether you're looking at football or cricket or any sport like that, if you do not have your home fans behind you, right, you lose that certain edge. And in the Premier League, we all know how uh, voracious home fans can be and how they can push their team on. And we're seeing that this season. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said it himself with how things are at Old Trafford, that United don't have that 12th man, and that's been difficult for them, and that's affected their home form. And effectively, no team has home advantage this year because there are no home fans. So
True.
therefore, it's just playing football on a football pitch.
With regards to the world of football, obviously, as you mentioned, it's almost everywhere now. When we talk about, we don't really have that edge anymore because you don't have those fans. Talking about all of that, I don't know how long. How do you see? Do you think maybe things may settle in with time because obviously the vaccines are getting out there? Do you see the world of sport back to the same normal that we had, or are we going to adapt to the new normal?
I think there'll be an adaptation, but we'll be obviously moving towards what we once called normality.
Right.
So I think that that's the plan in the Premier League, certainly with the clubs that I speak to. That the idea is to do it slowly but surely, to have methods in place that allow football stadiums to open up fully for fans,
Right.
for us to kind of go back to where we once were maybe a year or two ago, and to have that enjoyment and that passion back in our lives to attend football matches. But just at the moment, I think a little bit of patience is the right way to do it, to find the correct methods. I know one thing that they're looking at in the Premier League is having no physical tickets. So it would be just a kind of mobile ticket, and that means that would obviously help stop the disease moving around. And all of these little things will make a big difference at the end of the day. I don't think we'll see crowds back before the end of the season. We might see a few, limited amounts of people there, but the idea is to get next season back fully running, all fans back in the stadium.
True. Let's hope that comes into place. Anyways, I would want to talk more about a few matches that took place. Some of them were very interesting ones. We'll go back to maybe, let's start with Manchester United versus Brighton. Obviously, Manchester United is surely playing phenomenally well. What's your take on that match?
Well, I think United dodged a bullet in that game, and we've seen this at Old Trafford quite often from the club, even though they've had a good season, obviously being second in the Premier League. Going 1-0 down is nothing new for United. It's very a common formula that we see for Solskjaer's team this season. But they got over the line, and that was the main thing. At the moment, it doesn't really matter about performances. It's about results. And getting that 2-1 was vital, especially when you look around the league and seeing there were defeats for the likes of Chelsea, and obviously Leicester against Manchester City.
Right. That was an interesting match that you've just talked about, Manchester City versus Leicester City. But now if we look back, even though they're like on the top three, and West Ham, I don't know who's actually going to concede or maybe come up to that point, because West Ham for now is on number 4. But if we look back into performances, if we talk about one of the most strangest of them all, we'll talk about Liverpool itself. I think Liverpool has not been able to come up to that mark, even though they had this amazing victory against Arsenal. But what's your take with regards to Liverpool performance so far in the Premier League?
Well, it's been one of the most disappointing title defences from any set of champions that we've ever seen.
Right.
It's been a huge shock, their performances this year. Obviously, they've had injuries and that's impacted them hugely. But I don't think you can take those injuries and say that's exactly why Liverpool have fallen outside of the top 4. You would still expect them to be in that Champions League picture. Now, they're not too far away. The 3-0 was a great result. And I think that in performance terms, that was the best we've seen Liverpool play for quite a long time. They looked like the Liverpool of old. They looked like an attacking force that can go out and beat teams and score goals. So I think Klopp will be really, really pleased with that. And for them now, as Klopp did say, this is kind of almost a mini league to the end of the season to see if they can get themselves in the top 4. And I think if they do get 4th place, then maybe the memories of this season, the bad memories, will be wiped away, because for every top club in England, the idea is to be in that top 4 first and foremost, to get in Champions League next season, because it's so important for their finances. And I think with Liverpool, if they get in that top 4, then they'll kind of brush themselves off and they'll get ready for next season.
Right. But as you mentioned that, for a team like Liverpool, if there was an issue with regards to the defending side, because with regards to obviously them or their forward lineup, I think they were pretty solid on that. But, when it came to the defense, they obviously have not been able to get there or be up to the mark, even though, as you mentioned, that they have those injuries because of which they kind of lack that support. But what changes could have they made that by, up till now maybe they would have been like in the top 4 anyways?
Well, I think in the last 3 or 4 seasons, when they've been having their success, one of the things that we've highlighted is that they don't have a very deep squad. So they have a great starting 11. They might have 2 or 3 players that can come in off the bench, and that's fine as long as you don't have injuries. This season, they've had injuries, and we've seen the kind of deconstruction of Liverpool, that their performances have completely collapsed because they do not have options.
Right.
So I think that's one of the biggest slants against Klopp, is that he's designed this squad to perform with the 11 players that have won him, a Champions League title and a Premier League title. But this season, it's completely collapsed because he hasn't safeguarded against that. So I think that that's a lesson to be learned for Liverpool. They need to go into the transfer market and strengthen the squad rather than maybe strengthen the 1 or 2 tangibles within the team. It's much more important that they actually pad their squad out with good players, like they did with Jota. Bringing Jota into the club has shown that he can come from another Premier League team, he can perform at a high level, he can score you goals, and he can help you in those moments when you're suffering.
Right. I'll just have a quick word with you on the last team that I wanted to discuss. I wanted to discuss the fall of Arsenal. What has been their situation so far? Because people did have expectations from Arsenal, and a lot of Arsenal fans that I personally know are really, really, really disappointed. So what's your take on that?
Well, it has been a disappointing season. I think bringing in Arteta was the right move at the right time. I think he's a young, progressive coach that will build a football club, and certainly Arsenal need rebuilding. But I think, as we're seeing, this is not a quick fix.
Right.
There's no easy solution for Arteta to take maybe a bunch of veterans with a bunch of young players and turn them into a top 4 team. Right. It shows how difficult it is. Now, certainly their mid-table position maybe doesn't reflect where this squad should be.
Right.
But I think it shows the pain that Arsenal are going through. I don't think any of us in the game are surprised who work in football, because we see these things all the time in terms of performance value and whether you can get consistency in victories.
Right.
But we're seeing with Arsenal that they need to go out and buy players. They can't get away with it with what they've got. They're not going to suddenly become a 4th or 5th place team with their current personnel.
Right.
And Arteta needs to be backed. If he's not backed in the transfer market, then it goes on the board, on the Arsenal board. And the Arsenal board need to support their manager. If they don't support their manager, then they will be a mid-table club next season.
Right. Well, thank you, Rob, for being a part of the show and sharing your in-depth analysis in the world of Premier League. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So that was Rob. Yes, he did discuss the updates and the insights of Premier League. Anyways, we still have a lot more news coming up your way. So we'll see you guys after the break. And yes, welcome back after the break. And yes, before the break, we were discussing the world of Premier League. But anyways, we surely want to tap into the world of NBA. And with us is Abbas Abed, all the way from the US. Abbas, thank you for joining in.
Always a pleasure.
Great. So, Abbas, first things first, we'll talk more about Brooklyn Nets' victory against the Knicks, even though it was a very close call, 114 to 112. What's your take on the idea that James Harden has not been well? He has had that injury, and even in this match, he actually came in for like 4 minutes, and after that, he just couldn't take it. What's your take on that?
That's a scary, scary game for the Brooklyn Nets. And it's particularly scary for them because the way they are stacked up, they are a top-heavy team, which means that they are not very deep into the lineup, and their top 5 or 6 players are really good. And now seeing that after Kevin Durant, James Harden also goes down with a leg injury is really, really scary for them. Not only is that the injury is scary for them, but the result of tonight's game was also pretty scary. If it was not for Jeff Green's crucial free throws at the end, who knew the Brooklyn Nets could have lost. So things are getting chirpier as we move towards closer to the playoffs now. But as always, Kyrie Irving was special with his 40 points and 6 assists. And as usual, they always have someone who can carry them to the top. But they have to be consistent and they have to be healthy in order to make a deep playoff run. For the New York Knicks, as usual, RJ Barrett played really well. He's a young one who's really, really consistent now with his 21 points. And I guess they're putting teams on notice that New York Knicks is here to play as well.
Right. But if we look at the Eastern Conference standing for now, if we talk about the Nets, obviously they're still on the top of the charts. And when we look at Knicks, they lie on the number 8. So having this close call with a team of that caliber, but then yet again not having the main dream team that James Harden had actually visualized, how do you see this impacting the Nets in the future with maybe a more competitive team?
Yes, so there are two things that I'd like to discuss here. Number one is it shows that the Brooklyn Nets are not very deep. And if in the playoffs, even though in the playoffs the rotation gets shorter, but if they have to go deep into their lineup, they're not a really good team. So they have to figure out their health issues as soon as possible. On the other side, as you mentioned, New York Knicks is the 8th seed. But this year, again, we have a new format in the NBA, as Adam Silver last year introduced a play-in tournament for the 8th seed. So whatever teams end up for the 8th and the 9th seed in the Eastern and the Western Conference will take part in a very interesting play-in tournament. It adds spice to the league and makes the ending matches much more competitive. And it gives the bottom teams, number 8 and number 9, a chance to redeem themselves and find themselves a spot in the playoffs.
Right. So you're basically suggesting that it is becoming more and more competitive to have teams from the lower end also being playing with top-notch teams. But like I said, the injuries. It's not only James Harden himself who's going through. It's not the first time. I mean, it happened. I mean, they did play the last match as well. The Nets managed to win that match as well. And I think James Harden obviously just did want to step back. He just wanted to step on ahead to maybe get into the game and be that backbone of Brooklyn Nets. But currently, with the situation that he's going through, that is a big issue. And obviously, Kevin Durant, he also is injured. What's your take on that?
Yes, Kevin Durant is injured, even though Kevin Durant came back really, really strong from his Achilles injury last year. But again, going down again that soon puts a lot of question marks. We really, all of us hope that he's healthy and all the NBA players are healthy, so that we can see each lineup complete and against each other. So we have the full matchups on display when the playoffs come. But still, there are a lot of questions when Kevin Durant comes back. Will he be healthy enough to be in rhythm again the way he went out? Will they have enough matches remaining in the regular season to build any real chemistry to go against the top-notch playoff teams? Do they have enough to go to the NBA Finals, and that's really, really deep into the playoffs, and still have enough fuel left in the tank to not be injured and go up against the Giants? When we talk about Giants, there are just two Giants in the NBA right now. In the free agent market, particularly, the Brooklyn Nets signed LaMarcus Aldridge. That's a huge, huge sign. I think this is the biggest signing of the free agent market this year. And to compete with that, the Lakers signed Andre Drummond. So there's a lot of spice going on, and there's a lot of chirpiness going on around the league. So it'll be a battle of the giants. The way I see it, it's Godzilla versus Kong, and we don't know who wins. And sadly, only one of them can. So we have to wait and see who wins. But in the end, as always goes through, whichever team can remain healthy for the longest part of the playoffs wins the whole thing.
Right. It's this entire season has been really filled up with a lot of injuries that we've been noticing. But anyways, we'll move on to the next that we would want to talk about. That's the Atlanta Hawks against the Warriors. Yes, they won against the Warriors 117 to 111. What's your take on this match specifically?
Now, this match has its own nuisance value in the sense that Atlanta Hawks is a young team. They're growing. They were standing behind Danilo Gallinari's 25 points and Clint Capella's 24 points in the center. But on the other end, it displayed a lot of issues, or put on notice a lot of issues from the Warriors' standpoint. Steph Curry played really well. He's Steph Curry. We all know that, putting up 37 points in the loss. But rumors are that after the game was over, there was a lot of talking back and forth amongst the players in the Warriors locker room, and it was not a good sight. It was not a championship mentality team. So these are the issues that are raising up when the Warriors are going through the grind with their good players being injured.
Right. Let's talk more about the free agent market. Obviously, Aldridge signed with the Brooklyn Nets and Drummond signed with the Lakers. Even though some changes and all these things will surely be a positive impact on the teams itself. What's your take on these trades for lately?
So these signings are really, really important. I think the Lakers were primarily targeting the Marcus Aldridge. He is a veteran, a senior player. He's played with the great Popovich in the Spurs system for quite some time now. So he's really matured and he's really great offensive force. But he signed with the Brooklyn Nets, and that's what he decided to do. So he adds a really good veteran presence and a sort of sense of calmness into the locker room when there are a lot of young and hot heads in the locker room present. On the other hand, I see Andre Drummond. He's just 27 years old. He has a lot of basketball left, a lot of fuel in his tank left. He goes to LeBron James, who is a really, really good general manager, a really, really good teammate, and a locker room presence himself. Right. So there's a lot of positivity. I think it will be better for Andre Drummond to sign with a younger team because he has more room for growth. Also, I would like to mention that very recently, the Los Angeles Clippers signed DeMarcus Cousins for a 10-day contract. So let's see how that goes.
That's an interesting trade. Can you tell us more about the playoff contention? Obviously, the rules about the playoff qualifiers for the world of NBA.
Yes. So even though everyone always says that the Eastern and the Western Conference is kind of biased, or maybe it's not equal in the sense that the best teams lie in the West and not so much in the East. But there has always been discussion about the fact that you place a cutoff at the number 8 seed, and then the number 9 seed, which can just be maybe one game or even a half game behind the number 8 seed, is sent out. So last year with the COVID and the playoff bubble that was played by the NBA in Orlando, they decided to have a play-in tournament with 5 or 6 teams included in the tournament to fight for the 7th or 8th seed. That went pretty successful because that added a lot of fun and a lot of interest into the games by the general public and the fans. So this year, Adam Silver, known for his making strong and bold moves with the NBA, so the commissioner of NBA decided that they will have a play-in tournament for the 7th and 8th seed this season. This puts a lot of teams into the playoff contention, a lot of teams. So any team that can just cling on to the number 9 seed will get a chance to play for the play-in tournament. They will have a chance to play for a playoff run for their life, give their fans best experience, go to the playoffs. Even if they get out in the first round, getting into the playoffs is a huge, huge learning experience for the young team members. For example, if the Hornets make the playoffs in the LaMelo Ball in his first season will have plenty of experience under his belt. And we all know that the team owner Michael Jordan is already there. So players like these have huge opportunity just to be present, just to put their step on a playoff basketball floor, which is completely different from the regular season. And that gives a lot of hope.
Well, I hope, Abbas, I hope all this implements and puts in a good image to the world of NBA. I would like to thank you for being a part of the show, and have to follow up with more news then.
Sure.
Pleasure. So that was us. He was definitely discussing the world of NBA. I'll quickly jump over to the next news from the world of tennis. Yes, in the world of tennis, Hubert Hurkacz actually defeated Jannik Sinner to win his maiden Master 1000 title. Yes, this really happened, and it was an interesting journey with regards to the world of tennis, as we see, because it was definitely a stronger journey. But at the end of it all, Hubert actually managed to defeat Jannik Sinner. That was the Masters 1000 title. Quickly jump over to the world of Olympics because there have been few ups and downs, bit updates with regards to that. Yes, North Korea actually withdraws from Japan 2020 over the coronavirus concern. And as we've been discussing the Olympics thing for a long time, it has actually been, they're trying to change the dates, move it further forward. But at the end of it all, now is the right time that, they've decided to go for it. But they want to keep it closed encounter. They don't want a lot of public. They don't want to, they want to do the entire event because the world has been preparing themselves. A lot of athletes have been preparing themselves for this big day. So they've continued to go forward with it. On the contrary, North Korea has said that, they will not be joining the Japan 2020, the Olympics. Let's hope for the best. Let's hope everything goes well, even though the coronavirus situation is still getting out of hands. Let's hope and pray that it comes up to an end. Anyways, guys, you can surely write to us on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Sports. That works for Twitter and Instagram. Till then, take good care of yourself, and bye-bye.